All right, so thank you for joining us at our APRA Great Plains Fall Learning Series. This is our first session out of three. We'll be taking you really on a data journey. So today we're going to learn what to bring with you. So we'll pack the bags, so to speak. Just as a reminder, our next two sessions are the following two Fridays, so the 6th and the 13th. And we'll be talking about report generating best practices, as well as generating action from data. So please join us for those as well. And if you haven't registered, you can get the Zoom information on apragp.org. So with that, I'd like to introduce our presenter today. It's Liz Petrozelka from the Nebraska Community Foundation. Liz obtained her bachelor's of psychology from the University of Nebraska, and then she started her career in the nonprofit sector as an intern for the University of Nebraska Foundation, where she honed her skills in prospect research, data integrity, and information management. She then spent several years with the Tabitha Foundation in Lincoln, where she implemented strategies for database management, donor relations, gift processing, and prospect research. She now works as a database specialist for the Nebraska Community Foundation, where her primary role is developing and managing an expansive database for NCF's thousands of donors and volunteers. So we're very lucky to have Liz today. In her free time, Liz does enjoy learning everything and anything she can. She likes to listen to podcasts and audiobooks and loves coffee and cycling. So with that, I will turn the screen over to Liz. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to type them in the chat. If you want to ask anonymously, you can send them directly to me, or you can share your questions for the end. We'll have plenty of time to ask and answer questions. So take it away, Liz.
All right, hello everyone. Let me get this going. Okay, so I want to talk today about kind of like flexibility and database management. As Karen mentioned, my name is Liz Petrozelka, and I've been working in the nonprofit sector for over 5 years now. Yesterday was actually my 1-year anniversary with Nebraska Community Foundation, which is pretty exciting. I started off working in higher education, transitioning to healthcare, and now I'm working at a community foundation. One fun fact about me is 2020 definitely made me addicted to TikTok. So anyone else who has found themselves on millennial TikTok and has any creators they'd like to share, please let me know. I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about NCF, Nebraska Community Foundation. So we are a pretty unique community foundation. And I know a lot of people here are working in higher education. So I wanted to kind of explain how we operate. So in that top left quadrant, you can see that we have 1,500 volunteers throughout greater Nebraska, and we really rely on them to do a bulk of the fundraising. So similar to how at a higher education foundation, you're working with your deans and chancellors and various connections at the institution as a tool for your fundraising efforts. We use our volunteers as the primary fundraisers in a sense. So they're getting together in their communities to really make the changes that they want to make. And we're really there more as a resource. So as an example, one of our most common funds is what we call a community-based affiliated fund. And those are throughout various communities in Nebraska. And let's kind of go through an example. So like the town of Ceresco, which is my hometown, has 8 volunteers that have gotten together and decided they want to implement some changes in their area. So they do this cool mixture of community organizing and fundraising. And we're there as a tool. We focus a lot on education. In a couple of weeks, actually, we're having our big annual event, which is like a week of training sessions. And we're doing everything from teaching them how to make a gift ask, how to create a planned giving program, how to map community assets. So we're really more focused on that education piece. We serve 82 of the 92 counties in Nebraska. But I'm not really here to give you a sales pitch about NCF. I want to talk about how we have implemented our structure within a database. So this slide right here is kind of the reason why my job was created. We have this atypical community foundation, and a lot of CRMs are not necessarily created for community foundations. There are, of course, some that are, but your really established CRMs are not really fit for community foundations. Combining that with the fact that we haven't really relied on a database in the past. Prior to my coming, I think a year or so before I was brought on, we converted to Razor's Edge. And that transition didn't go super smoothly, but it was also the first time that NCF had a CRM that was built for the nonprofit sector. Prior to that, they had a CRM that was, I think, created for a logistics company. So when you take into account that we are an atypical community foundation that hasn't really used a database before, it's led to a lot of creative problem solving within the database, as well as a multitude of policy decisions. So I want to talk about one of my greatest achievements through working at NCF, and that is this actions type, which is circled. This is a fun flashback for anyone who used to use RE7 and hasn't seen it in a while. This is what it looks like to add an action or a contact into the database view of Razor's Edge. Disclosure though, only my operations team is in RE7. The rest of my development staff is using the web-based version of Razor's Edge. That comes with its own fun little situations, but I digress. All right, so this next statement that I'm going to make is kind of a big statement. So like take a deep breath. I think it caused a lot of anxiety to most of you on this call. But a year ago, we weren't adding any actions to our CRM. A year ago, we weren't adding any contacts to our CRM. We had this fun little process where every development staff member would create a new Excel. Mostly it was a new Excel every week. They would list out their contacts, their interactions, and send it to everyone's email inboxes to die. Nothing happened after that email was sent. Sometimes people would reference back to it, but for the most part, all of those contacts, no one has looked at since. So one of my top priorities after I came on a year ago was to change that. We needed to be in our CRM more. We needed to start adding those contacts, those interactions. But the question was, how are we going to do that? And how are we going to make it as easy as possible for our development folk who hadn't really been in a CRM before? So that box that is circled is kind of insignificant, but it's also incredibly significant. Most organizations, from my experience and my knowledge, is they tie that box to the goals that they have set for their development staff members. So mostly those are like scheduled meetings or meetings that happen by chance, attempted contacts, all of those goals that you're setting for your development officers to meet on a weekly or monthly basis. But that's not anything that we keep track of. We like to know that those interactions are happening, but our development staff are not graded on making those meetings because we're doing that fun mixture of community organizing as well as a little bit of fundraising and a lot of planned giving work. So we needed to come up with the best way to capture that information. And I'm going to, again, ask you to take a deep breath because this is a big statement. What we came up with was a list of 20 action types. And 20 is a lot. Ideally, I would have liked 5 or 6, but we have so many different methods of kind of like the business sector that we're doing, that we needed a lot of different categories. And I'm not going to go into what these all mean. It's a lot of jargon. I will say that AF does mean affiliated fund, in case you're wondering. But this is our full list of 20. So how do we get started with this? And I know it's incredibly cheesy to say this, but it really does start with you. If you're not excited about your database, if you're not excited about whatever change you're wanting to make, you can't expect anyone else in your organization to be. I am definitely fortunate that I work for a smaller organization, because it did allow me to literally talk to every single person about what changes they want to make organization wide, and get an idea of what they honestly didn't even know what they wanted, but they wanted, because they hadn't used a CRM before. So I really wanted to take the time to listen to everyone, hear everyone's thoughts, and that way I could really create a plan of action to make the changes that we wanted to make. So kind of actually like shampooing. You want to shampoo, rinse, repeat. That's kind of how I see getting change implemented. Is you want to create your ideal plan, involve some people in the discussion of that plan, make the changes, involve more people, change the plan, and repeat. Now, saying that, you also want to avoid getting stuck. It's would be very easy to get in that feedback loop and just never get out of hearing everyone wanting to change something. And trust me, we definitely get stuck in that from time to time. But I really feel like if you've taken the time to hear out everyone's concerns, you're going to get some feedback that's really good, even though you're also getting some that's not so helpful. Finding a cheerleader at your organization, preferably someone who's not in your department, is huge. If you have someone else getting excited about the changes you want to make, others will catch on to that positivity too. If you can get leadership actively on board, specifically, if you can get them to be your cheerleader, it's going to help getting that change created immensely. Lastly, I just want to reinforce the idea that on this call, we're mostly experts about our data, about our database, and rely on that. You know how your database operates, probably a little better than your development folk, maybe not, but rely on the fact that you are the expert. So when it comes to implementing change, I took on a multitude of variations as to how to get this change across. So I've done a lot of group training sessions. I've barged into a lot of development staff meetings and made sure I took up 5-10 minutes of their time to get things across, and a lot of one-on-one sessions. So when I mentioned one of my greatest achievements being getting that actions type created and getting us to use actions in database, that was probably about 2 or 3 months of doing back-to-back like group training sessions every couple of weeks, checking in and doing one-on-ones every 3 to 4 weeks, just continuously making the time to meet with everyone. And again, I realize that's not feasible for everyone, since most of you do work at larger organizations. You can't take the time to speak to 80 people, but getting in touch with the people that you're in charge of, getting in touch with the people in various departments is huge. So continuously having those one-on-one sessions will really help getting your changes to be implemented. Next, meeting people where they're at. I was a psychology major, so I like to kind of learn where people are at in their mind. But learning where people are at with their database skills is huge. Knowing who needs a little more help and who you can just let fly and do their thing and they're good to go. Knowing where they're at will help streamline your processes as well. And providing resources in every way possible. I've recorded Zoom sessions that I've done. I have a lot of training documents that I pass out. Getting every single different type of media you can is huge with helping people be more self-sufficient. All right, so I did talk a little faster than I planned, so I do have some concluding thoughts. Real authentic change, it does take time. Getting everyone's voices at the table helps speed it up, but it also means that you have to take a little extra time to hear everyone's opinions. Getting as many people involved as possible is also such a huge piece of the equation because you want everyone's voices to be heard. One of my greatest achievements was big, but there's still a long ways to go. There's a lot of change that we need to implement at my organization. We need to continue to restructure our processing processes, creating enhancements to the way our development officers can operate, and also streamlining a multitude of processes. But again, remembering that you're the expert will help get things done. All right, and then my last slide is just my contact information. So if you have any questions, please let me know. I would love to talk to more people about RE7 and their RENXT struggles, but that's all that I have for today.
Thank you so much, Liz. With that, we have plenty of time for questions. So if anybody had some, please feel free to ask them in the chat or unmute yourself. Otherwise, I did have a couple questions come in throughout the presentation. I'll jump in with one of those first. And if you're formulating a question, again, please feel free to ask at any time. So someone asked, what is one step that you took to get buy-in to enter information into your database because your staff had not been used to doing those actions?
Yeah, so we had, I think we were pretty unique because there were a lot of people that were hungry to do this. A lot of people were really wanting to get that data because, I mean, who wants to create an Excel every week and go back to that? So really showing people how this can help them was huge. We also were unique that we had someone on staff that was the only one that was going in the database and had been sending out emails for about a year with their contact information being easily pulled from the system. So we had some unique pieces there, but for sure, being that champion, being the one that's excited about getting things in the database certainly helps, as well as getting leadership involved if you need to.
Okay, we had another question come in, which is, you mentioned kind of the shampoo method of rinse and repeat. They were wondering if you've had to change your plan for database management very often. And if you have, how do you manage concerns from people who want to make little changes all the time?
Sure. So for the most part, we kept our core structure the same. There were a few things that we had endless questions about, but most of them were really big structure questions to our organization. Luckily, I did not have to make those decisions, and the exec team had to make those decisions. I will say that list of 20 action types, I don't love it. There are a couple I could do without, but you kind of have to give and take. There are some things that people feel very strongly about, and some arguments aren't worth winning, in my opinion.
Okay, and then the final question that I had was, what were some of the most important things you implemented into your policy? Since you got to start kind of from the ground up, you might have a unique take on that others haven't had the chance to try in their own organization.
Yeah, so we're really taking it step by step, kind of department by department in a sense. some of the core policies are just really getting it into the system. Our development folk don't really have strong, like, you need to make 5 contacts a week. It's more show us what change is happening in a more abstract way. So we're pretty unique in that way.
Okay, I've got another question that came in here. Could you speak to change management with all of the new things required because of COVID, along with system changes? Have you noticed any fatigue or tips to help people manage that?
Sure. So I hate to say that we're unique again, but we kind of are. Most of our development people don't live here in Lincoln, where we're headquartered. Most of them have been on Zoom for their entire career with us. So that has helped in that regard. We really like to reanalyze things on a very frequent basis. Um, our leadership, even when it comes to COVID, they're telling us weekly what changes they want to make to even us working from home. Um, when it comes to making that change, we just want to keep that open end of communication going. So we're constantly talking about what we can do better, and everyone kind of knows me as being that person of, if you want to change something, come to me and we'll figure it out.
Great.
Hi there. I am one of NCF development staff in planned giving. I work with Liz, and I used to work in the prospect management world. And I want to add a little context that I think is before Liz's time at NCF, and that's we went from a staff of, I don't know, 5 people a few years ago to a staff of 26 people now. And so part of the reason people were hungry for this change was because all of the historical information lived in 3 people's heads. And so I'd walk into a meeting and, despite my best efforts, know nothing. And so it's really important for everyone to have some sort of way to be on the same page, or at least know some details. Can you guys hear my dogs barking at the garbage men? I'm sorry. And that was probably one of the biggest things that helped our culture shift, was just the fact that we had more people who needed to know more things. And Liz put together an action report, like I'm sure you all have, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, ever. And I think that was one of the things that really catalyzed the shift to, oh, okay, this is helpful. So thanks, Liz.
You're welcome.
Any other questions out there? All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us. If you have any specific questions, feel free to contact myself or Liz, and we would be happy to answer those at a different time. Like I said, this session was recorded, so you can find it again if you want to reference anything that Liz talked about later. And we hope that you'll join us all next Friday. Have a great weekend, everyone.